Morning everybody, welcome to Facebook Live on this slightly grey Friday here in Dundee. We're here today to have a chat about one of the really famous historic contributors to the People's Friend, a gent called William C. Honeyman, aka the Violin Man, aka James McGovern, aka the Oracle. He went by a lot of names, did an awful lot for the magazine. We are coming up to his the centenary of his passing, which is this Saturday, 13th of April. And for those of you who were able to join us at the Mitchell Library last week, we had a little talk from Barry here, from the archives team, about William. And we thought we'd go into a little bit more detail about him and find out a little bit more about his fascinating story and how much he did for the magazine. So yeah, let's start. Like I said, this is Barry from the archives, and okay, William, what is his background? What was his kind of early background?
Honeyman was born in Wellington, New Zealand, 30th January 1945. His folks had emigrated out there a couple of years before, and round about the time he was 3 or 4, they moved back. Well, the mother moved back. I think his dad was a bit of a drinker. And she was worried about the children she had.
Yeah.
So they came back to Scotland, to Edinburgh, and Thomas, the dad, went on to California to chase a fortune in the gold rush, and was never heard of since. So right from the very early, right from the start, Honeyman had a bit of mystery about him.
Yeah.
So he had a real life mystery going on.
And why kind of are we still talking about him, do you think? Why does he still stick in our memory to this day?
Well, it's almost a counter-argument that why aren't we talking about him more?
Yeah.
We're talking about him today because of his contribution to the People's Friend over 37 years, which is formidable. And he was there right from the early years, 1873 onwards, up till 1910. And he may well have contributed after his retirement. He seems like the sort of chap who would have stopped. But I can't believe that he's not more widely discussed. The work that he did, even just in the McGovern books themselves, and McGovern stories, to my mind, would be enough for him to be a household name more than he is today.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was so versatile and with so many different features, fiction and agony uncle columns, that he was so versatile. His contributions are unfathomably huge.
We'll talk a little bit about the McGovern books in a tick, which were a huge part of his career.
Yeah.
But am I right in thinking his first role was as the Violin Man in The Friend? Was that his first role? Or?
No, he was a violin player. He came back to Edinburgh, and by the age of 18 was so proficient at violin that he was teaching. Played in various orchestras, as far as I'm aware. I think he was a composer, conductor. He played. And I think he only slowed up because he'd suffered some horrible hemorrhage of the lungs, which I think slowed him down. Got married, which maybe encouraged him to settle down a bit more. And I think he'd been writing for other magazines, some articles about violins, and I think one of those editors has said, why don't you turn your hand to detective fiction? So from what I can piece together, he'd come up here to speak to David Pay, and McGovern character was born.
So when he was the Violin Man, which he was for us for about 12 years, does that correlate to the same time? Was he writing the McGovern things at the same time?
There's maybe a bit of an overlap. Yeah. So McGovern runs in The Friend from 1873 up till about November 87, which is coincidentally about a month before Sherlock Holmes makes his debut in print. And round about that time, I believe he was adding to the general inquiries column. I think he was chipping in, especially if there was inquiries about violins, which there were, which much to our amusement today, but there must have been a fad at the time. So he was well placed to answer these queries, and out of that grew For Violin Players, which is the column he ran for many years.
And he obviously wasn't, what you're saying, he wasn't short of queries for those 12 years.
No, he was not. I mean, and I think to an extent he fueled that himself. So once he'd effectively retired McGovern, he set about writing a series of books about violin playing,
Yeah.
and these were based of his own teachings. He taught his daughter, and she went off to the Royal Academy, I think, but he was teaching her, and he put all this stuff down in print.
Yeah.
And these books, I believe, are still sought after and very much highly thought of today. So he, off the back of that, some of those were serialised, and then he wrote various features about the history of the violin players in Scotland. So it's almost like he kind of fed his own column, so he sort of fed that interest.
But he had some pretty interesting letters during his time as the...
Oh, he has, yeah, I mean, I don't know about the letters, we never get to see the actual letters, unfortunately.
No,
only the replies, but they themselves are definitely worth looking at for comedy value for someone alone. Would you like an example?
Yes, please.
Right.
Yes, please. We love these. For those of you who don't know, yes, he was the violin players or violin makers around the country were sending him in queries about anything to do with violin making or playing.
Not just queries, they were actually sending in violins.
Yeah.
I mean, whether bought or made, and apparently this was a big thing back in the 19th century, people were making their own violins. And whether this was based on any of his own books, whether he actually made a rod for his own back, I'm not sure, but he, so there are accounts of him being in, I think, Bank Street as it would have been then, probably annoying everyone else in the next office, scraping away so he could pass genuine comment on these violins. So I've got a couple here. I'll just forget where these are from. And they're always addressed to whoever writes in. I think they write in anonymously, and once you read these, you'll understand why. So the first one I've picked out is from, or aimed at, precisely, somebody called Stanley Ladd. And it says, après is a French word meaning after. Therefore, the label on your violin clearly intimates that it's a copy, probably a cheap factory fiddle. Another fortune gone with a stroke of a pen. So straight away, somebody writes in thinking, oh, I've got a Stradivarius or a Cremona. How much is this worth? And they're probably mentally spending this money already. And just straight away, straight to the point. I mean, he has to. He's got a limited space, but brutal takedown of this.
He didn't mince his
prize fiddle, yeah.
No.
My favourite of all, though, is addressed to Bedule, and I don't know what these names mean, but straight to the point, he says, "This is the most horrible looking violin that has yet come in here. If you want to give anyone a fit, show him your violin. If you have an enemy, ask him to play upon it, and he will die on the spot. It is no excuse that this was made by a shepherd with a penknife. Works of art are not made thus. Tell him to forbear in future." I mean, that's a takedown on the half. I mean, this poor shepherd whittling away in the fields, scenting this thing he's obviously very proud of. And I think he'll have been glad for the pseudonym himself at the end of that.
Yeah, anonymity of that, yeah.
But can I just, I'd like to balance that out.
You had a kind side.
He had a kind side, and I'll just very quickly read from his obituary in the Courier, which goes on to say about Honeyman. Tender-hearted, yet a caustic critic, which we've heard, Mr. Honeyman was as ready to give generously when his sympathy was evoked as he was to ridicule friends as well as foes on points that did not meet with his approval. So we've heard the caustic, so I thought I'd like to balance that out with something that I found quite late on. And the pseudonym or the pen name given me is OGM from London. It says, "Dear Sir, I am 16 years of age and I am in an office earning only 7 shillings 6 a week. I would like to learn the violin, so I have been saving up to get one. Could you please inform me where to get a violin, or could you get one for me for about 15 shillings or thereabout?" And Honeyman replies, "We shall be pleased indeed to get for you a nice violin with a bow and case, and to add some trifles on our own account. And we predict that the boy who at 16 has so much enthusiasm, patience and self-reliance will become not only a good musician, but a great and good man." So he could dish out some really nice stuff when he wanted, when it was wanted, I think.
When praise was due, he was definitely there to
for sure.
It's definitely there to give it. And what, so also we were saying he did do a lot of work as James McGovern as well.
Yeah.
And this is one of the really interesting stories, isn't it? Because we kind of also have some suspicion about it. Well, first let's talk a little bit about what he wrote as James McGovern. They were detective novels?
No, they were detective short stories.
Yeah.
They were compiled into books, but I don't believe he ever wrote full novels of McGovern. I would love to be proven wrong. It would be great to see one. But yeah, they were vignettes. They were experiences of an Edinburgh detective. That's how they're advertised. And right from the very start, they used the McGovern pen name to convey a degree of authority and realism. So rather than a fiddle player writing about this stuff, you had this experienced detective, this man of the world who'd done all this stuff. And he was obviously very convincing because people believed it.
Yeah. And there's some evidence that, do we know that it was actually based on the case studies of a real policeman? Is that?
I'm not sure how close to that. I mean, previous to that, there had been a real Edinburgh detective, James McLeary.
Yeah.
And he'd written his memoirs. And based on that, the People's Friend actually had a detective series before McGovern. And they were going to emulate this. So this chap was based in Glasgow. We don't think it was Honeyman. The writing style, like McLeary's, is a bit dry. I'm not a fan. So I think when McGovern came out, it was something new. Yes, it was done from this first-person point of view. It was meant to be memoirs, but it was a bit more human and less dry and a bit more of a narrative. So that's what he did with McGovern. I mean, it's hard to sort of put it into context. I mean, the cases themselves could be quite trivial.
Yeah.
But you know, it's strange. A lot of people would think that because it was in the People's Friend in the 19th century, it was all going to be sort of doily theft or maybe tea caddy embezzlement of some sort. But the actual villains themselves were a nasty bunch. Really nasty bunch, all the way from your low-level embezzlers and conmen, sort of muggers, thieves, pickpockets, murderers, and infanticidal psychopaths, which is probably not a phrase you expected to hear today, but they were in there.
Blimey. And there is some evidence, this is the really interesting thing, is that there's some evidence that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle may have been inspired by him to. What is this evidence? How did we kind of
a real detective would describe it as circumstantial. To the best of my knowledge, Arthur Conan Doyle never publicly cited Honeyman or McGovern as an influence.
Yeah.
But when you start to look back through the stories, you can see things that may have been lifted. There's a lot of speculation, for example, that Holmes's enjoyment of the violin is actually down to Honeyman's profession. And there's a book written about this that goes into it in far more depth, and I forget the name of the researcher, apologies. But she picks this apart and says, yeah, down to the violin he plays, it looks like it's been lifted. There's also, what's the other one? Holmes's last story. Do you know the name of Holmes's last ever story?
I did.
His final bow, in which he comes out of retirement, I think, to thwart German spies during the Great War.
Yeah.
And at the time, he's retired to Devon to do beekeeping, to become literally a honeyman. And it's speculated elsewhere, you know, it could be read two ways. It could be his last bow or last bow, But for me, I think you can see little elements right from the very start.
Yeah.
So just the other day, I had the pleasure of reading the very first McGovern, and it's a real good origin story, along the lines of every action story and every superhero comic book adaptation you'll ever have read, where he starts off as a lad, is befriended by the local bobby, and he's, I think McGovern himself is fatherless at this point, his mum's a widow, and he's recently recruited to help the local police catch a purse thief. And this begins a fruitful and quite sort of loving sort of mentorship, where you can see the trajectory, what's coming. And So straight away, you've got the recruitment of youngsters to help the fight in crime. So you've got your Baker Street, the regulars. But then in the course of this story, they set up a Moriarty character, Jim McCluskey. I don't know if I've got the quote here, but I mean, I'm going to see if I can get this out for you, because I made a note of it earlier. Yeah. So Jim McCluskey, one of the cleverest villains that ever trod God's earth. And McCluskey was one of these guys who's like a spider in the middle of a web. So he had people run around doing crimes, and he'd profit but never get his hands dirty. Because he became so fed up with McDermott, this is the Bobby McGovern friend, he has this PC beaten up, fatally actually. So basically you've got the mentor dying. Yeah, it's quite bad. You've got the mentor dying. So you've then got this vengeance sort of idea, and at the very end of the very first installment, you have this memo by McGovern, and it says, "At whatever cost, and though it should take a lifetime to accomplish, trap McCluskey." So you've got all this build-up straight away. So he's had a think about how he's going to do this. He's going to hook the readers, but he's also got this arch villain, this Moriarty.
It's brilliant, you're right. It is like an origin story. It reminds me of almost like the Batman origin story or something.
It's like every superhero story almost. The last piece of evidence I can show you actually, and this is something that Marion spotted a couple of days ago, one of your colleagues. I don't know if this shows too well on your camera, but this is from, I think, 1884 Christmas special. And Honeyman, among his other skills and jobs, was an editor of The Friend. He actually edited this entire Christmas number, which is a big deal. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is where Honeyman meets McGovern in a sort of weird metafictional act. McGovern is down here, handcuffed to a perp, so he's hidden in plain sight. But we think this is Honeyman here in the deerstalker in tweeds. And we've actually got other pictures of him later on in the adventure wearing deerstalker in tweeds. So I mean, you can draw your own conclusions, but I think there's a growing body of evidence. Yes.
So actually, his violin queries kind of stopped early 20th century, about 1909, 1910. But had he already sort of established himself? He was called kind of the Oracle by this point, but presumably.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from. I'm not sure if that was something that he helped himself to. But yes, he'd become known as the Oracle through the course of his violin column for violin players. But what happened was that just quite organically, readers started to write into him for advice in other areas of life, in particular, affairs of the heart. So this went on for a couple of years, and there's actually a really good example of a guy who's also a keen violin player, or very just keen on the column, offering Honeyman a shilling to the love dog if he will remove love from this column. And Honeyman's response is beautiful. He said, "Well, you might as well ask me to remove love from the world. It can't be done." He says, "George, you read these little vignettes, and that's all we ask. But if you're not in love, be thankful." So clearly they realised there was something else going on here. This violin column was starting to be padded out more and more with all this other, love stuff. They thought, well, we'll segregate that. So they came up with Love Not Untied. Not Untied, I think it is.
Yeah.
And those two ran concurrent up until 1910. I forget which one finished first, but it was obviously in the build-up to his retirement in 1910. They both ran at the same time.
Yeah. And
there was no fanfare about it. He left both columns with, what was it? The words, "Thank you for your kind attendance."
Yeah.
And that was it. Very classy. Dropped the mic, exit stage left.
People would be quite brave, I would think, to ask him for love advice after his words on Violin Man. So doesn't pull any punches, but
he doesn't. But I mean, I think that's what people appreciated.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, he was well placed to give this advice.
Yes.
There's a bit of a sad backstory, but he had been married. I think it looks like his wife had died very young. He lost, I think, about 5 sons. So this is a man who'd been there, done it. So he understood heartache, I suppose. So he was well placed to offer this advice. Brutal as some of it might well have been. And he wasn't just the writer's problems seemed to have a go at. I've seen him dig at people for daring to write in pencil, which is hilarious. But if you'd like a couple of quotes, I could furnish you with a few.
If you do, that would be lovely. That would be a great way to
do this. At the risk of offending everyone. Again, the people who wrote in didn't give their real names.
Sensible.
Very wisely. So here's one from Constant Reader. Constant Reader was either this person had a lot of problems or they just used this name a lot for anonymity's sake. The reason you do not attract men is your lack of a magnetic personality. Those who have that always have heaps of friends and admirers. You are greatly handicapped by your shyness and you should try hard to get rid of it. You must not despair, however. Some man may want such a mate as you. He'll think that your shyness will last for life, little dreaming of how quickly you'll find your voice after marriage. Yeah, what's the other one I really quite liked? Yeah, Dorothy, and I hope this is a real name because poor Dorothy would have helped us for this. Dorothy, you will certainly be left an old maid if you do not change your character from a standoffish and disagreeable one to a kindly and trustful one. You seem hot-tempered as well as disagreeable, so you have a big task ahead of you. So, yeah, I mean, you don't tread lightly, do you? I mean,
so then, when he retired did he retire from everything in about 1910?
Well, he seemed to retire professionally in 1910, but I mean, if you follow some of the stories and articles through the Courier and Advertiser from that time, you can see he's still massively involved in the literary and musical societies in and around the sort of Dundee area. He succumbed to the lung ailment, which is sort of, I suppose, almost killed him early on in life. Came back with a vengeance in 1919. He died on his way over to Dundee. So he's still very active. He died on the Fife, or took ill on the Fife and the ferry on the way to Dundee. So I imagine, I don't think he was slowed up. I think he's probably still contributing in some way. But like a lot of his other stuff, we may never know the full extent. He was so versatile and so prolific. I mean, it's amazing he had time to start a family, to be honest. But
yeah. But it's amazing. I mean, he's not the only editor who passed away.
No.
Similar circumstances, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. We won't touch on that. I think David did enough of that last week.
Great. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks everybody for joining us today. If you've got any comments or questions, please do just leave them below in the comments section. And we hope you have a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you next Friday. See you soon.